And welcome once again to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today is Dr. Tara Kafori from River Educational Consulting. Doctor, it's a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you for having me again, Errol. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. So since we last had a conversation, so much things had changed over the year, and that is something we'd like to address this morning. But first and foremost is our present culture nationally speaking. You know, we Americans, we grew up in a society where we were entitled to freedom of speech. And to be quite honest and frank speaking, somewhat we can say that it is getting taken away, but I would prefer to say that it's gone. It's gone through the window. And because of that political trend, I see that the nation is somewhat traumatized, even though there are some who may choose to live in a state of denial, or there are those who probably love that atmosphere. But however, for those who prefer to live in a democratic-oriented society, they're not taking that well, and I think it's doing damages to society economically, through the work culture, and all professions are experiencing mental changes due to this national trauma or depression that's going on presently at this time. With that being said, you know, we have to be very circumspect these days in how we speak. So I would refer to leaders probably, or speak generally, opposed to pointing fingers at one particular person. In your view and opinion today, how do you see democracy now than it was probably 10 years ago?
Well, Errol, I would agree with you. I think that right now we're living in a state of fear and anxiety. We don't really know what rights. We know that the Constitution exists, and we know that the right that are listed out in that Constitution are clad iron strong. However, we're recognizing that in the world right now, in our streets, they're not really being utilized. They're actually being manipulated and taken away. So we see that in the news reporters that are insulted or censored. We see that in the nightly TV show hosts that are being removed from the television. We see that in schools, losing funding because of DEI and other requirements, and also First Amendment rights. And we're witnessing these changes, though we have this Constitution and we have the amendments that give us these rights. We are recognizing that we are losing those rights, and we're constantly being told that we cannot execute those rights in the way that we have normally and typically done before.
Absolutely. When you see that happening, for people of all walks of life, American citizens, residents, or whoever they are, especially those who are here legally, experience this imbalance in whether it's political changes or whatever the case may be. Do you see that having a very negative impact on what we may see as a nation probably 3, 4, 5 years ahead of us?
Yes, I think everything is going to take a toll. Everything that we're seeing right now, not only for mental health reasons, but psychological reasons, how police operate, how the government operates. I think it's going to change almost every ounce of our society. Yes.
Absolutely. And one of the things I'm concerned about is that you and I and people around our age group would have raised children to one form of atmosphere. But I'm really concerned about the children who are now growing up in a strange atmosphere with parents on a different view of life, different principles of life that is thrown through the window. What kind of society you think America may end up being? What you think? I mean, everyone has their personal beliefs and concepts about life, but when my grandmother used to say these words that if the head is sick, the whole body is sick, right? If leadership of any nation is unstable in mind, and bring unstable precepts and concepts in their way of management to its people or indoctrinating its people, what legacy would they be leaving for their people? What ambitions and desires that you could think about when you was in a democratic society living, what would it be like now at this time?
Well, that's a great question. It's actually one I can't really answer to in depth, but right now what we can think about is the children that are growing up now and the individuals that are living in this society right now are growing in their trauma, or they're growing in their fear, they're growing in their anxiety. They're going to be more hesitant to talk out about the government. They're going to be more hesitant to really, we see the streets are flooded with protests, but yet we also see a lot of people not even, like you said earlier, sticking their head in the sand and not paying attention to the news, or not making opinion on it. They're not voicing their opinions. And we're educating the younger groups to just not say anything, not do anything, or the opposite. We're encouraging them to get to the streets, and that is our rights to protest. But then, on the other hand, then you're seeing all the trauma that is going on in the streets. You're seeing the deaths of, the two shootings in Minneapolis with Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and you're seeing the child that's being taken at 5 years old or even younger, and then you see the pictures that have just been released of little children holding babies because their parents have been deported. And so all of this is going to have an impact. I agree with your grandmother's statement that when the head is sick, the body is sick. And we have to figure out how to turn this around where we're not going to cause, undue, unfixable harm in our country. And I fear, unfortunately, we've seen a lot, done a lot, and this is now our history that we have to overcome.
Absolutely, and I agree with you there, because a little over a year ago, I heard someone came on CNN and they made the statement that it only takes approximately 18 months to move a nation from being a democratic society to a society of dictatorship. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that when citizens of a country or countries, concept of living was based on the principles of democracy, is now hindered with dictatorship principles. I think it just doesn't strike a blow to the person at large, but to the whole nation, because the way of it destabilizes society in many ways, economically speaking, psychologically, emotionally, physically. There's a complete imbalance which subjected you to the superiors above you. And right now, how I see it and how I view it, it looks more like the initial stages of martial law is being declared, not directly spoken from the leader's voice, but the trauma that is being delivered to its people, its communities, its states, and so forth, given by the orders of the supreme leader, if you want to call it that. They're there to terrorize people. You have the right in this country to protest peacefully. But then if you are protesting peacefully, why then are you confronted with militants, folks with masks on their face and their big guns on their hips? They bring psychological abuse to your brain. They emotionally destroying you. They're physically beating you. They're physically shooting you to death. That is sending broad statements to the nation at large. This is what is about to come your way if you don't shape up and get in line. And this is why I would have asked before, how would we perceive our generation going forward under this kind of treatment? Because the next 2 years from now, and this persists, and there's no way of harnessing it to a place or neutralizing it where it has no impact on people's life, it's just going to get worse. We see judges went to prison already. We saw pastors pull out from the churches. the system went to churches, yanked people out from services, and all these things are going on. They're going to schools, even hospitals. Right. When this happened, this shapes automatically. It don't take long. It gets into the human psyche that
right.
you're under a dictatorial standard. What words or what advice would you give in a forum like this to keep people strong and prepare to live a normal life?
Talking to some of my colleagues, we have all come to the conclusion that we do have to continue the message, like you said, to keep strong, to keep moving forward. It is hard, to be honest, even from the standards that we hold value. We just have to remind people that there is a Constitution. We are holding the Constitution tight. It is over 250 years old, and it was meant to be everlasting. There are supposed to be some changes to it, right? And that is okay. But to throw it out and force a dictatorship or fascist system or whatever as what is appearing right now is not an option for the United States. And we have to remind people to stay strong. We have to remind people not to give in. We have to remind people to use their voices. Even me, right now I'm wearing my t-shirt that says resist. Anything that you can do, anything to stay strong. You have to have the conversations with your children about what they might have seen or what they might have heard from their school buildings. The school buildings especially are all on their high alert. They're doing all that they can. Administrators are doing all that they can to resist the ICE from coming into their buildings. Same thing with work, hospitals, workplaces, hospitals, and other avenues of where ICE goes into. But we do have to be prepared that there is a psychological toll on the youth that is coming, and that's going to have a big impact. And we have no idea what, especially for Minneapolis, where, in 2020 with the George Floyd protests and the loss of his life, they had just gotten the significant results from the long-term damage that was caused by that. And then now to add Renee Good and Alex Preddy and the violence that's going on in the streets, we just have to lock down, use our best best judgments from our head. We have to be able to know that we do make mistakes. Every single person makes mistakes. But yet we have to be able to know how to prevent the repeated trauma from happening for the residents that are there, and then secure the assistance that they will need. And they will need a lot. And we need to, without being, again, too political, we do need to right the ship at the front. And the front office would be the executive branch, the judicial branch, the legislative branches need to figure out what needs to be done, not in the direction that they're going right now.
I agree, absolutely. The thing is, they are 100% aware of what's going on in front of their very eyes, and it seems to me that no one can say anything. And that's what really, that should be the thing that worries people a lot, because right. If you know for a fact that your leader is doing things that's wrong, and you doesn't have the courage to represent your people and stand up for your people, then right. What is the reason for you being there? It's not that they don't know. They can see, they understand. But rather than to speak directly to their leader and say, well, look, what you're doing is wrong.
Right.
No, they find excuses. They try to batter it up. And when it goes that way, that empowered him a little more to go further, right?
Right.
So beside that, I want to go on to the impact of the young human lives, because we recognize that there are kids up to this point, approximately 25 children under the ages of, I think between 1 and 2, there are like 20 U.S. children citizens who were held in ICE custody. I mean, between 1 and 2 years, I'm trying to fathom this, because even if that child were a child of an immigrant who were legal or have some issues, it's a United States citizen. It has all equal rights, despite of age, to get treated like a citizen and not someone who have invaded your country. Why should a child that age be detained? I don't know. But what I do know for sure, the impact will have a lifelong scare on that child or
Right.
children in this case. I don't think there's any psychologist, or I'm not saying it can't happen, could really erase bad memories like that from a child's mind and prepare it to work in a society that would engage in benefits for themselves as well as for their nation. How could we really restructure a child's mind like that?
Well,
These are like babies.
Right, they are, and it's again, trying not to be too strong with my opinions, but I think
Yes.
it's absolutely unacceptable for us to have had this situation occur. There is no reason why this should be occurring, but I think we're going to see eventually is that there's going to be a whole new line of mental health treatment for these individuals, because between, global events like what's going on in Israel and Palestine, with the young individuals seeing that there as well. And then now in the United States, the psychological toll on these individuals and these little babies into their, adolescence it's going to be interesting to see at how strong the psychological toll might be on them in regards to intense fear of adults, with distrust of their environments. Will they always be in a fight or flight state of mind? Or is it hopeful that when our brain starts to mature and they start to grow out of infancy into adolescence and toddlership into adolescence, that the brain will prevent those memories from being to the forefront and will actually lock them away so that they won't have that? But I don't think we're going to see that. I think, sadly enough, I think we're going to see a lot of fight or flight responses where these individuals, these children, are going to grow up in a constant state of panic and distrust with anxiety. I think we're going to see a lot of increase in depression. And I think, for us as mental health professionals, we're going to have to learn to adapt and learn how to really dig deep and figure out how we can restructure the brains of the children that have gone through this. And then also the society that has watched this happen. Again, there's millions that are taking to the streets to protest. And they're watching it and they're fighting for it, but they're not having their voices heard, and neither are the children that are there. And you're right, we have a government that sees it but is not doing anything. So to get back to the previous question too, is my role as a therapist, my role as a mental health professional, along with my colleagues, is to make sure that we don't allow people to give up, that we continue to remind them how strong they are and how resilient they are and how they can overcome all the obstacles that they have.
Yeah. I try to imagine a father or a mother who may be in this country, whether it was through TPS or they happened to get here in a form that weren't legal, but for some reason there was a pregnancy had come about, they give birth to a child, and they have to look that child in the face at 4 or 5 years old, where the child can barely understand anything that's going on, and say to that child, well, son or daughter, I came to this country looking for a better life. I got pregnant, now you're here. The government is getting rid of illegal parents. I don't know what next I can do to provide a future for you, who to leave you with. I mean, there's so many questions to be answered, but how could we well, not me, but how can parents best engage with their children at this stage? I mean, schools are providing counseling how to deal with matters like this. Should ICE show up at their schools and so forth? There are organizations, churches that educating and prepping the congregation how to prepare with matters like this. But how can the parents themselves really shape that mind of the child in a way that they can grow and mature enough at that tender age to deal with themselves or to keep themselves in a safe place?
I think unfortunately there's not a straightforward answer to that question, right? I think just having the plans, like you said, like if they are taken, who do they go to? Who's going to care for the children? But yeah.
That's a tough one. So those are some things that really I look at on a serious level, because that can shape what happened today shapes the future for tomorrow. If our children's brains are not nourished in a positive direction, that they can be productive citizens of tomorrow, then I mean, what nation then are we be raising? Because, as I said, if the leader is sick, the whole nation becomes sick. The whole body becomes sick if the head is sick. And rather than people think productive, they're going to they become constipated in mind, and for some reason, we've got a nation of psychotic people. And those who agree with the dictatorial standard of living, they are already psychotic. So the ones who are thinking about immuning themselves from what the atmosphere may present to them, they may eventually become psychotic too. Then America would look nothing more than like a third world country. We love our country, but as you said, what a voice we're going to give these children to. There got to be something positive that we can inject in these brains at a young stage that will still navigate them through life in a very positive manner.
I would probably even more say, maybe not injecting, but but teaching our youth to just keep going. So we're going to continue to educate them. We're going to make sure that they're reaching those milestones in school, reaching those milestones at life. When they're held in detention centers, they're not receiving good schools. They're not receiving all that good treatment, right? So what we can do, the best thing that we can do is continue going forward as if we're living in the democracy while adding the additional protections, adding the additional responses that we need to have, adding the additional psychological help, the mental help, the academic help, making sure that we're filling in the gaps where we see it, and trying to give them the best of the daily life that we possibly can. We have to be vigilant in protecting the children, but we also have to be vigilant in protecting their development. So I don't know if I would say to the parents to have all these plans, or is it more of continue doing what you're doing and try to push out as much of the trauma as you possibly can by giving other supportive environments and supportive factors, teaching them sports, teaching the students creative arts, teaching art through therapy through art, how to get their feelings out on a drawing, even as little as 2 or 3, 4 or 5, to be able to support them in that way so that they're not bottling it all up. But the biggest thing we have to make sure is this country right now does not want educated and opinionated people. So we need to make sure that we are equipping our young children with those opinions and with that education, so that way we can continue to take back our country.
Well, that's a good perspective on looking at it. My only concern is that when we embodied ourselves with such knowledge of democracy and standing up for the governing principles of our forefathers, that those same very principles become our whip, in the sense that it gone against everything that now would have been put in place, because we would have known our Constitution state this. But now, if you go with the Constitution that was of a democratic formula, it now breaches the formula of a dictatorship society, which means you're now subjected to be penalized or put in prison, or this kind of behavior may start to happen to you. I don't know at this stage what neutral engagement maybe I would like the word neutral engagement, that we can keep a sense of consciousness to the children that's now coming up.
Well, again, it's kind of like when you have any kind of a relationship that falls apart, right? You want to keep the children as isolated from it as possible. So even, just trying to keep them off of the television or off of social media when they're young, even if it's in the background for you, the little ones are picking up on what they hear and what they see. So, making sure that there's not that influence there, and then talking to them every day, talking to them every night when they express their fears or if they're acting a little different, to make sure that you're supporting them, to try to calm their nervous systems, teach them the strategies that we are learning as adults and we're learning as a country too, to calm our sensories, right? Anywhere from for littles, like you can have a bath or a shower, or just to calm their nervous system a little bit, and then just continue to try to live life as normal as possible for them, because they need the stable lifestyle that they should have.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, Dr. Kaffour, it was always a pleasure having you.
You too.
We will continue to meet from time to time to discuss matters like this. And we have come to the end of our program. So for all those who have been tuning in, I want to say to you, have a great day. Take good care.